Hello and welcome to 10th or Tuesday. This is episode number 22. I'm Michael Boldin here in Los Angeles with my co-host,
Michael Maharrey here in Lexington, KY.
Mike. Today is day 215 that the GOP has failed to repeal Obamacare. I'm sure we're going to keep going with this for a long time, unfortunately. Let's get right into some reports. There's been a number of things that have been moving, which is bills that have been signed into law that have gone into effect. For example, in Colorado, if we're talking about health care, the Direct Primary Care Act just went into effect this month there in Colorado. Give us a quick overview. I think it was... What's the bill number I'm trying to find there? It's House Bill 1115 that went into effect on August 9th.
Yes, indeed. And it was unanimously passed in both houses of the Colorado legislature. And this is the bill, we've talked about it quite a bit, but it's really one of the first and really key steps that states can easily take to begin to undermine federal health care. Mm-hmm. And essentially, all it does is it stipulates that these direct primary care agreements where the doctor contracts directly with the patient for services that it does not constitute insurance under the state's insurance system. So what difference does that make? Well, it means that the doctors don't have to worry about being regulated under the onerous insurance regulations and insurance laws that exist both at the state level under Obamacare. So these type of relationships between doctors and patients make it a lot easier to control costs and breaks down some of the barriers between the patient and the doctor. So these are great bills, and it facilitates a doctor-patient relationship outside of the Obamacare, pharmaceutical bureaucratic federal
nightmare.
State nightmare. Yeah.
So the short version is it's removing a bunch of rules and regulations on the state level where people can then, on their own, between an individual and a service provider, a doctor, we can call them a service provider because that's what they do, then just make an agreement to say X amount of dollars per month, you're going to provide these types of services whenever I need them. This is a fantastic idea, and it can, depending on whether or not the people are interested in this, if people decide to start doing this, you'll find a lot of people outside of what we consider the normal the nightmare of a government-run system. I mean, even where people think this is a private-run system, there's so many rules and regulations that it really is under government control. So that was House Bill 1115 that just went into effect on August 9th in Colorado. A similar bill was just pre-filed in Florida. They've tried this a couple of sessions now. Hopefully they'll actually get it through as more states are passing these into law. The Direct Primary Care Act was just pre-filed for 2018. It's Senate Bill 80 by Senator Tom Lee. Did you notice anything significantly different, or is it the same basic concept there in Florida, Mike?
Yeah, it's almost the exact same bill that they ran last year, and it overwhelmingly passed the House, but then it kind of died in the Senate. I think it was one of those bills that just ran out of time. And okay. Florida has one of those horrible systems where it has to go through like 73 committees before it actually goes to the floor for a vote. So hopefully they can get that done this year because, Florida's a prime state for this type of doctor-patient relationship. I think it would be very popular there.
Yeah, once the new administration came in power in Washington, nothing to advance liberty moved forward in Florida this year. Unsurprisingly, generally states you find like Florida and, I don't know, California tend to be extremely partisan. So California is moving this year a lot of things to oppose the federal government. And in previous years, they have done some things on surveillance, for example, even when Obama was in office, but it's really expanded since that time with the Trump administration in. And just the opposite in Florida. There were a lot of bills that were considered, some were moved in Florida, and now this year, nothing. So hopefully now that we'll see some partisanship settle and people will focus on doing things that are positive. The Direct Primary Care Act is extremely good. As a personal fan of cryptocurrency, I think it's the same type of thing. Basically, you're creating a system that people can just choose, if they want to conduct business in a way that's outside the government-controlled system. And if people do that, then and they learn that they can get what they want without the government helping them, that will move the goalposts further towards liberty. And I think the Direct Primary Care Act, like you said, Mike, this is really the first step to establishing more health freedom on an individual and a state level.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's interesting because it's not just, patients. I know a lot of people that love this concept.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a doctor the other day, though, actually my new family care physician that I'm switching over to. And we got to talking about direct primary care, and he's looking into doing it for his own practice. And he was telling me about how much bureaucracy that he has to deal with as a doctor and how it puts this wall between him and his patients. He says, I'm basically having to check off boxes and meet these regulations as opposed to providing the kind of care that I want for my patients. So, it's not just the patient side of it, it's the doctor side of it. The doctors want this. They don't want to have, they didn't go to medical school to be, insurance clerks. They went to medical school because they want to help people and treat their conditions. So we just passed in Kentucky a direct primary care law, and he's seriously looking into it. So you can kind of see that when you open those doors, there are people that want to take the opportunity to walk through them. And like you say, the markets, it's amazing that even in such a horribly regimented system like we have in healthcare, the market is still trying to find ways to work.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you're thinking of fascism in the definition of like that Benito Mussolini, this is one of the original guys. It's the merger of big business and big government together, and the healthcare industry fits that. I mean, I hadn't thought of it maybe until now as being a fascist program, but when you're basically having government directing business from the big level all the way to your individual doctor and what kind of decisions they can make, this is bad news. We do not really want that kind of top-down control. How does some politician know how to care for you on a local or an individual level on your individual care needs? They do not. They are not trained in this. We want the people who are trained in this to be able to make the decisions, to make the right ones, to make the wrong ones, to learn, not make them all political discussions. Our friend Jeff Deist over at Mises Institute had an article recently talking about all that. And I don't want to get into this much, Mike, but all the nastiness over in Charlottesville. And he basically said this is an outgrowth of having all of our decisions being political, and we need to depoliticize. The less you politicize, and in our view, that our talking points are always about making things decentralized. That's the whole 10th Amendment idea. The more that you have top-down control, one-size-fits-all solution, the more that people are going to get screwed over individually and not get the service or the life that they want. So bring this down locally, and we're going to have far more liberty.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we've worked with politicians. These guys aren't necessarily all that smart. I mean, what they're good at is getting elected.
Oh, there's intelligence to that.
Right. That doesn't mean that they're good at running healthcare or running an economy or foreign policy or anything else. So. It's absurd to put so much control and power in the hands of so few people.
We all know the term snake oil salesman, or the phrase snake oil salesman. A snake oil salesman was able to earn a living because they could sell snake oil. They were very good at selling things, and I think politicians in general today are snake oil salesmen at best. So let's talk about a few more pieces of legislation that went into law. Asset forfeiture, our last episode a couple of weeks ago, we focused totally on this new memo from Jeff Sessions and the DOJ, basically fully supporting the federal asset forfeiture program and encouraging a partnership in the equitable sharing program between states and feds to get around any state restrictions on asset forfeiture. So we've been working very hard to have states pass legislation to ban the partnership or to opt out of these federal programs, unless, of course, there's a criminal conviction. So if there's a conviction and people are going to lose their property after committing crime, that makes sense. So simple constitutional type of an approach. So 2 more states actually have laws that moved in this direction, in Arizona and in Colorado. I think Colorado was the better of the 2. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, well, the Arizona, they did some reform. Okay. But they didn't go as far as to require a criminal conviction. But they did up the level of evidentiary standard that has to be met before they can forfeit, and they created
That's on a state level, right? So there's
Right,
there's
exactly.
two things at play here, and you can go back and watch episode 21 of 10th or Tuesday if you want to get all the details. But basically, there's two parts of this puzzle. One, the restriction on a state level, and then two, if the state has restriction, can they simply just pretend that they're getting around? Well, not pretend, but actually just get around the state restriction by saying, "Oh, hey, this is now a federal case, so now we're going to partner with the feds, and the state restrictions don't matter," and then they get around that, and that happens all around the country where there are state restrictions, and that's why it's important to actually address both of these. So Arizona on a state level did some moderate reforms, correct?
Yeah, but they did include in that language a provision to close that loophole. So that's shut down now. So if they can take further steps, no matter how high they bring their level in the future, they won't be able to use that circumvention mechanism because they did put that in. So that's a significant part of the Arizona bill.
And I think
not
that's
so much the reforms, but the loophole closing.
And I think the loophole is closing in a vast majority of situations. In Colorado, House Bill 1313, which also went into effect, each state generally has a similar date for all laws that go into effect. So Colorado, again, on August 9th. I think Arizona was the 8th or the 9th as well. The Colorado bill, we have some more research that we found about the federal loophole. So they made a limit that's in the law that says anything over $50,000 still can be transferred to the federal government. But according to the Colorado Municipal League, they said over the last 5 years, 85% of seizures would not have qualified.
Right.
And that's a lower one. Most states are actually saying 100,000. You can't partner with the feds without a criminal conviction. So while we would like to say always, it should always be closed without conviction, we're still talking about a significant improvement over the status quo there in Colorado, also in Arizona.
Yeah, and I think that's true around the country. I think most of the asset forfeiture cases are relatively low levels, way below that 50,000 threshold. I read some information that in the vast majority of cases, you're talking about less than $1,000.
Yeah, so they're just going after the people that can't defend themselves, people with just very little property, and it's a lot easier. I think Ryan McMakin over at Mises Institute actually has a blog post that talks about how, and maybe it wasn't him, but I saw it over at Mises about how it's easier. I mean, if you're talking about economic sense, it's easier for a lot of law enforcement agencies to go after people who don't have tons of money. And I know some people who watch this will say, well, how could you imply that law enforcement agencies are just going and ripping people off? Well, the sad fact is they absolutely are. And we're talking to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars is being taken without conviction. In California alone, I believe the number we're talking about, like 65, 70, I can't remember. It's like an astronomical amount of cash that is being taken from people. In Colorado, which is much smaller, it was $2 million.
$2 million. Yeah, I was just looking at that. $2 million.
Over 5 years. So there's a lot of money. A lot of money coming through. And that's just the amount that's being partnered with the federal program. Then you have to look at the money in the state program. Institute for Justice, IJ.org, does a very detailed report. You can go to their website and go state by state, wherever you're living, and get all the details. They break it down over a 13-year period, how much money is being forfeited without conviction. And they give a rating if you just want to go do the simple version of it. Most states should probably be F, but I guess you have to do it on a curve. So that's very positive, both in Arizona and Colorado, to say, hey, we're not going to participate in a federal program that helps us or encourages us to take money without a criminal conviction. All we're asking for, it seems very simple. You'd think it's very common sense, just a simple criminal conviction before the government can take someone's property, not just mere suspicion, or maybe we pulled your car over and we think you're doing something wrong, so we're going to take it, because that opens the door to all kinds of crazy abuse. For people on the left, they're frightened of the president right now, in that he's going to crack down on everybody or whatever it may be. Well, people on the right were also very concerned about the previous president, and it's whatever side you're on, there's always someone in power who doesn't like you. So you don't want anyone to have this kind of power, no matter what side you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key. People need to to understand. It's all about power. It's all about limiting power, devolving it down to the smallest units possible so that it can be controlled. Because if you're not controlling the power is controlling you.
Yeah, we can go back to you did this interview with the Lions of Liberty podcast about what's the guy's name at the Libertarian Party, Nick Sarwark, right?
Yeah.
And you did this podcast about how there's a group of libertarians out there that really want to centralize power. They basically want a libertarian libertarian God to come in and force liberty locally. The thing is, it's just not going to work. The problem is every time you empower somebody to do something good, and I learned this from the great Harry Browne, rest in peace, many years ago, the great Harry Browne, who was a Libertarian Party candidate for president a couple of times, he basically said every time you empower somebody to do something good, you've empowered your opponent sometime in the future to do the exact opposite. So we don't want Washington, D.C. forcing liberty down anyone's throats. We don't want the United Nations forcing, although it probably would never happen, but I mean, maybe someday someone would want the United Nations to come in and fix the problems in the United States. We don't want that to happen, because as soon as somebody else gets in power, politicians only last so long, then they can flip the switch and do things the other way around. I mean, it's really just a messy business.
I said this the other day, that giving the federal government more power to get liberty is like giving Walmart a monopoly to improve your shopping experience.
I've never been to a Walmart.
Well, I can tell you that
is it bad?
There are some low prices, and there are some good things about Walmart, but it is not going to improve your shopping experience. Okay. It's not a place where you're going to get great customer service. Let's put it that way. Now we're made all the Walmart fans out there mad.
Well, all my money goes right to the Washington Post. Right. Or is that Whole Foods? All my money goes right to Jeff Bezos, really. Because, I mean, if we're talking customer service, I go to the people who give me the best customer service. I get it at Amazon. I get it at Whole Foods, also Amazon. So I used to work at Target, which I guess, I mean, it's funny because so many people this is totally off the rails, but so many people are opposed to Walmart. But a lot of the people that I meet that hate Walmart, they don't have a problem with Target. They love Target because it's cuter and trendier. But Target has the same business model.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
So it's pretty hypocritical. Anyway, so we're totally off the rails there.
Don't monopolize power. That's we don't want a monopoly of Walmart. We don't want a monopoly of Target. We don't want a monopoly of anything.
Exactly. One other bill that I want to cover, and you've mentioned it a few times in previous shows, is this bill in Washington State to decriminalize hemp, House Bill 2064 from our good friend Representative Matt Shea. That ended up we got to do a really quick rundown on what happened there. They decriminalized it, and then the same time they criminalized it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two bills.
Here's basically what happened. They passed the first bill, Matt Shea's bill, excellent bill, completely decriminalized hemp, opened the door for unlimited farming of hemp for any purpose despite federal prohibition. But then there was a second bill that was passed, and there was already a structure in place that allowed the Washington Department of Agriculture to license hemp farming. So the second bill actually gave that department the power to unilaterally penalize people for violating whatever their regulations happen to be. So that means that the Department of Agriculture could put federal regulations that can enforce the federal regulations.
I'm sure they're going to do that.
And they're going to do that. Yeah, they've already said it. I mean, they were saying all along that's why they wanted the power. They want a federally compliant hemp program. So they're not going to end up with a hemp program. It's going to be like these other states where they've tried to be compliant with the feds. And I bet in a couple of years...
Fascinating. In Washington State, they've legalized marijuana, the cousin or sister or brother of hemp, and that's all over the place. Why not just let farmers grow this product that not only eats a ton of CO2 for those who are concerned about that, but is also used. You can use it for clothing, for oil. You can run a car on it. You can make paper. You can do rope, all kinds of stuff.
Yep, it's amazing. So, I bet you here. Let's mark this down. We'll mark it on the video. I bet
say
you
episode 22. Within how many episodes?
Let's say within 2 years, Washington will back up and get rid of the federal federal regulations when they realize that they can't develop a hemp program with the feds breathing down their neck.
If we were on Reddit and we had a date, there's a bot on Reddit. Every time you say a remind me, it would give you a notice, I think an email or a message through the system to remind you in 2 years. I wish we had this for 10th or Tuesday. I'll try to make a note. I'm going to set a task in 2 years and see if Washington State fully decriminalizes. I'd like to cover a lot more. There was another bill in Arizona that helped prohibit warrantless stingray spying. Maybe we can cover that in the next episode. But if you support this kind of work and the efforts that we're doing here, please go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/members to sign up and support us here at the TAC today. And, of course, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time here at 10th or Tuesday.